Alright, I'm not going to bury the lead. I hate finishing. Okay, well, maybe not hate, but I don't enjoy it. If anything, I tolerate it. But it is one of the topics that I get asked about most often, so I figured rather than answering a bunch of emails individually, I'd just make this video. So before we get into it, a couple key things to remember. One, I'm not an expert, so anything I say here shouldn't be taken as definitive or the final word. Instead, I'm somebody probably like you who just wants a finish that's relatively easy to apply and will do what I need it to do. Two, there are way too many finishes to possibly cover, so instead of hitting everything, which I couldn't do, I'm going to focus on two types of finish, and these are what I use 99% of the time. And I'm sure that's what everybody does. You kind of find what works and stick with it. And three, there are way too many variables to possibly hit everything specific to every person. So again, these are just recommendations and what I've gravitated towards during my woodworking career. Okay, all that said, the first step in finishing, regardless of what product you want to use, is sanding. And I know that's not what you came here for, so if you want to skip this, you can just fast forward to this time and you'll get right into finishing. But my number one single biggest tip when it comes to sanding is this: don't rush. Whenever you have a large panel to sand, people's tendency is to want to go like this. But in reality, you should be going like this. I like to do overlapping passes, alternating between going lengthwise and then going widthwise for however many passes it takes until I'm done. Basically, imagine you're mowing a lawn. You wouldn't push the mower in a dead sprint in a random pattern. You'd go back and forth. I guess you'd probably only go lengthwise and not widthwise, and certainly you wouldn't make several passes. Look, the point is, I have fake grass. Anyway, so slow passes, and you're going to start with 60 or 80 grit, and this is where it's going to take you the longest. You might want to periodically check by drawing some pencil marks on your panel and taking another pass, and just keep doing this until everything is nice and level. Then we'll move on to 120 grit, 150 grit, 180 grit, and finally 220 grit. And that's where I'll usually stop. Well, I take that back. For spots that won't get touched, I'm going to stop at 180 or even 150. So for example, take something like this dresser. I'm going to sand the top and the drawer faces and the sides to 220, and everything else to 180, except things like the underside of the bottom and the underside of the top. I'll call 150 good enough. Okay, now I know sanding is boring, but just a couple last things because I think these might really help you. In addition to sanding in a logical pattern, don't push overly hard, and don't tilt your sander. I know it can be really tempting when you feel a high spot to want to dig in and kind of grind away, but don't. And that's actually one of the things that I've come to really like about this sander, the Mirka. At first I didn't like the fact that you have to depress the paddle to make it run. I was used to my old sander, which had a switch that you didn't need to hold. But over time I've come to really like it because it almost forces me into using good technique since the pressure I'm putting down is centered over the sanding pad. Okay, this is the last thing, plywood. So all of the same stuff applies, except that usually I'll start with 180 and then go up to 220, or sometimes I'll just start and stop with 220. Basically, you just want to be careful not to sand through the veneer. Okay, now we can get on to finishing.